Peace to the family. This is Ikemba Ojore of We Charge Colonialism, also a member of NPDM, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. And I'm here with another study session, the Blueprint for Black Power. So I want to appreciate everybody that's viewing and will be viewing this conversation or this discussion. I want to make sure that you like and share the podcast. Make sure you like and share the podcast and subscribe to our channel, We Charge Colonialism, if you're not already subscribed. Peace to the family. Peace to the family. Yes, it's been a long time since I had this discussion. There has been a lot going on, but I'm going to stay the course, which is to make sure that I get through this whole book. And we're going to do an exegesis on this text, the Blueprint for Black Power. So if you haven't purchased the book, make sure you get a copy of Dr. Amos N. Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power. And join this study, be a part of this. There's a lot going on too in regards to, the movement for Black Power, the Black Liberation Movement. I'm excited about a couple of conferences that are taking place this spring and summer. The Republic of New Africa has a conference going on this month, starting this month, I believe March the 30th to April 2nd. Down in Charleston, South Carolina, I believe. But look up Republic of New Africa to get the exact location. You can also follow me at Global Ubuntu Foundation. I have the information there. As a matter of fact, let me give you the correct information. And also, Community Movement Builders is organizing a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, this June. So you can go to Community Movement Builders website to get more information about that. The Republic of New Africa's conference is from March 31st to April 2nd. And that's going to be in North Charleston at North Charleston Community Center in Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm going to make it my job to be at both of those places and to have a voice at both of those conferences because the time is now, man. Organizing for Black Power. To advance our communities, to organize internationally as Black people to overturn the system of colonial capitalism is very important. So, as we always do today, I'm going to be reading from Chapter 1, Competent and Legitimate Authority is Power. I have a couple of videos, too, that I want to pull up, very short videos. So as I go through this section, I want to connect it to some of the videos that I have planned to show during this session. I have a Malcolm X video that sort of connects to, not sort of, it absolutely connects to what Dr. Amos N. Wilson is saying in regards to competent and legitimate power. So appreciate everybody's viewing. I like to get right into it. So I'm on page 16. Competent and legitimate authority as power. All right, so competent authority involves the achievement and exercise of social power derived from knowledge and skill, and where behavioral compliance is obtained from the subject in return for his receipt of some benefit or service awarded by the authority. It's a very short paragraph, so I want to read that again. Because this is very important. It kind of sets up everything that's going to be discussed in the rest of this section right here. So he says competent authority involves the achievement and exercise of social power derived from knowledge and skill, and where behavioral compliance is obtained from the subject in return for his receipt of some benefit or service awarded by the authority. Right. So when we're reading Dr. Amoson's work, we always, even if he's talking about it in a sense of individual relationships, personal relationships, he always wants us to transpose that with group relationships. And what group relationship he is focusing on is the relationship between the Black community and the white community, the European community and the African community, because this is the relationship that we should primarily concern ourselves with under the system of colonial capitalism, of European political and economic domination. Now, it's not to say that we have to make sure that we exercise power and other relationships that we have with other groups of people. But the primary relationship, when we're talking about this system, the people who are at the helm, at the reins of the global international system, with the military power, with the economic power, the political power, we're talking about the European, Western European to be exact, with the United States being the extension of Western Europe. So with that being said, this, when he's talking about in this particular paragraph, he's talking about the African, our compliance to the European system, our compliance to the Europeans' authority has to do with us thinking that our compliance is going to garner us to benefit from. There's some sort of benefit from it. There's going to be some receipt of some award if we comply to the European, if the Europeans' culture, the Europeans' way of life. With that being said, Uhuru, Conrad, Uhuru. So with that being said, it goes back to African people. Why are African people not revolting against the system of colonial capitalism? Because we believe that if we go up against the system, just generally speaking, if we go up against the system, there's going to be some punishment, right? There won't be any reward if we go against colonial capitalism. Jail, death. We think about the result. And why do we think about jail, death, or any other negative or consequence as a result of going against the system? Because they have set the precedent for that. Anytime that we have gone up against colonial capitalism, what have they done in the past? They killed our leaders, they lynched our leaders, they jailed our leaders, right? They poisoned our leaders. The chemical warfare, the biological warfare on our communities, like this has historically happened. And so there's this idea of, in order to avoid that and to get the best result, or to be able to be rewarded in the system, is that we have to follow the rules of colonial capitalism. We have to follow the rules of white power, right? And so that in that first paragraph, that's sort of like it's going to set up everything that he says. So there's something. Well, let me go, because I don't want to get ahead of myself, because I think he's going to touch on some of the things I want to talk about. So in the next paragraph, he says, wrong defines competent authority as authority that rests solely on the subject, the African is the subject under this system, right? The subject's belief in the superior knowledge or skill of the exerciser, rather than on formal position in a recognized hierarchy or authority. He further contends that competent authority is a power relation in which the subject obeys the directives of the authority out of belief in the authority's superior competence or expertise to decide which actions which will best serve the subject's interest and goal. And a lot of times too, I want to make another point. A lot of times, African people may do things out of just pure survival, survival tactics. We may be very conscious of the system exploiting and oppressing us. So we can't homogenize, the African thought process in regards to the way that we view the system. Some of us do want to integrate and assimilate, and we think just like the European. But there's Africans who understand like the system is beating them down, suppressing and exploiting them, but they still get up and they go, work their 9 to 5 or whatever they have to do in order for them to survive. They don't fight. Dr. Huey P. Newton, what he called it reactionary suicide. So we have those folks who, they know what's going on, but they're just hard pressed to just keep living their lives because of this threat of the punishment that's being spoken about, that Dr. Amos N. Wilson talks about, right? And then there's those who are like, man, revolutionary suicide. We gonna go out with with a bang. We gonna die with our boots on. So again, he talks here the directives of the authority, or the belief of the authority's superior competence, right? So there's some of us who have this belief in the military. I'm taking straight to the military, right? The military superiority of the European. There's no way we can go up against them, right? So we better fall in line, better than to join them. We can't beat them. Let's join them. This idea we can't beat them, right? And also just like this belief that, somebody's a doctor this, doctor that, and some of you may know that I have my doctorates, but but there's this idea that because the person is a doctor, that they have this expertise and this knowledge, or they have this formal education, right? Or the bourgeois class who control these institutions, which Dr. Wilson is going to get into in the next few paragraphs. Let me read those. And this chapter sets up chapter 2 with bases of power. So I can't wait to get into chapter 2 because that's really going to lay out how the European is able to dominate Africans, right? Because of the control of these institutions. But I'm at the top of page 17 right now. And then after this, I want to play this clip just to show you how real what Dr. Amos N. Wilson is talking about, just bringing it back to our present conditions. So he says, competent authority or expertise or expertise may crucially be used as a mask for social privilege and power exercised by one group over another. So let me read that again. Competent authority or expertise may crucially be used as a mask for social privilege and power exercised by one group over another, right? So they're masking this social privilege and power that they have. They don't want us to recognize that they have this social privilege and power. So they're going to mask that. They're going to cloak that. It hides social privilege and power because it appears to merely exist to advance the public interest, right? So this is belief that they're working in the interest of the masses, right? When really they're working in the interest for the bourgeois. They're really working in the interest of the ruling class. Yo, Chairman O'Malley Chattel, I wish I had this this Burning Spirit article that we did in a Spirit study, and I think Nkululeko, I think you was on that study too when the chairman was talking about the party, the Democratic Party and Republican Party, like these bourgeois parties, like they're working in the interest of the bourgeois. So we joined the Democratic Party thinking that they working in our interests, or the Republican Party thinking that they're working in the interests of those people who are registered Democrats, registered Republicans. They're not working in your interest. They're working in the interest of the bourgeois class, the ruling class, the capitalists. And so we have to be very clear on that. But Dr. Amos N. Wilson is talking about how they cloak that, how they hide that. So moreover, competent authority or expertise, particularly if it is held in high social esteem and is well organized, may use its claim to superior knowledge and skill and to operating in the public interest to legitimate the rule of the powers that be. The legitimacy of their rule under other circumstances may be questionable or denied. Hence, competent authority, if monopolized by one social group, which it has been monopolized by the European, if monopolized by one social group, may serve to facilitate that group's social power over a dependent, less competent subordinate group. In such an instance, the latter group may be relatively unaware of the extent and the degree to which it is dominated by the former. If it is aware, it remains relatively powerless to the degree to which it lacks or does not exercise expert knowledge. I just talked about this. That's why I said I didn't want to get ahead of myself, because I know Dr. Amos and Wilson are going to hit these points. So let me just read the last two sentences again. He said, in such an instance, the latter group may be relatively unaware of the extent and the degree to which it is dominated by the former. Even if it is aware, it remains relatively powerless to the degree to which it lacks or does not exercise expert knowledge. Right. So let me stop here. I want to share my screen because again, like going into how when we talk about competent authority and expertise, how are they able to put themselves in a position where they're looked at as having expertise? What gives them expertise? Like them being an expert in a certain subject. They were able to monopolize certain skills, talents, institutions, and so forth, so that they could be looked at it. Remember, we were locked out of. We came here as subjects, as slaves, right? And even as slaves, when we were able to exercise our skills or practice our skills, it was only to benefit the European. And then after chattel slavery, what did they do? They had to de-skill Africans because now Europeans had to compete with African people. So now they had to be able to get a monopoly over certain skills, certain industries, and them being able to do that, locking us out. Now we had to look to them. There was this dependence on Africans on the European because they controlled all of the life-sustaining institutions, all of the means of production. Yes, Black power, Black liberation. So let me share my screen. I want to give you an example of what took place in order so that they can gain or so that they can secure a position of competent authority and expertise, how they locked this out. So I'm going to go to the Clinton riot of 1875. It's about 2 minutes. So stay in there with me. All right, audio. And if y'all can't hear it, let me know, but y'all should be able to hear. Is this sharing? Oh, hold on. Let me do that again. I don't think I'm sharing it right now. All right, so this is going to be right. Share. Here we go. Got it this time.
This week, Clinton leaders are remembering a race riot and massacre.
It's a tragedy that happened more than 100 years ago. 16 WAPT's Ross Adams is live from Old Town Clinton with more.
Friday morning, leaders from across Clinton will gather here in Old Town at the intersection of Jefferson and Westlake for the unveiling of a marker, a special marker commemorating the race riot and massacre. Clinton leaders are marking one of the darkest chapters in its history, an 1875 race riot and massacre.
And 3 whites were killed, at that time known, and there were 5 blacks, including 2 children.
Former Clinton Mayor Dr. Walter Howell says a group of white men from Raymond and Bolton hunted down and killed some 20 blacks. Other accounts say more than 100 blacks died in the massacre.
Because of what happened when a group of whites tried to disrupt a political meeting attended by about 1,500 black men, women, and children.
During that meeting, gunfire erupted between blacks and whites. People on both sides died in the shootout. Then in December 1875, a gang of men gunned down Charles Caldwell, a black Republican just elected to the state Senate, outside a building that still stands today in Old Town.
Probably at least 40 bullets riddled the body.
As a result of the shootings, whites took control of state government and blacks were left without political power for almost 100 years.
They were majority in Hinds County. They were majority in the state of Mississippi. But you get past this riot in the 1875 election and they just disappear from the political scene.
Now, as part of this commemoration, there will be a special seminar on race relations tomorrow night at Mississippi College. Among the speakers, former Governor William Winter and federal Judge James Graves. And when that marker is unveiled here in Old Town on Friday, the descendants of the former state senator Caldwell, who died in this very spot, they will be on hand for that unveiling. Live in Clinton, Ross Adams, 16 WAPT News.
Ross, thank you.
That right there, there is just one example of how the European was able to gain his position, right, over the African American, quote unquote, American in this country. As you can see, black people were pushed out of positions of power after chattel slavery, relatively, speaking, where you had the enfranchisement of Black people in this country, where they were able to exercise the quote unquote right to vote. But there's a whole bunch of contradictions even with that, right? But even those Black people who were trying to exercise their right in this country was looked at as a threat by Europeans. And so they were pushed out of positions of power so that the European can gain that what Dr. Amos N. Wilson is talking about, that competent authority, where over 100 years, us not being able to go to certain schools, to receive certain education in this country, to be able to have businesses, flourishing businesses, to be able to sell to all people, right? Our businesses were marginalized, our people were marginalized. And as a result of that, in order for us to like really thrive as a people within the country, because we couldn't create a nation of our own, they wanted us to be a part of the system, but they wanted to limit what we can do in the system so that they could exploit us, so that they can be able to all of the wealth that we was generating with it among our communities, they were able to take that wealth from those communities, right? And so us not being able to exercise political power in this country was a way for them to gain legitimate and competent authority. Now, in this next section right here, I think is very important. He continues, and this is the last section I'm going to read, and I want to show another video. European Americans monopolized the position of competent authority in addition to monopolizing the means of certifying, legitimating, and delegating such authority. They, through racial discrimination against Blacks, monopolized the means of gaining access to competent authority, right? Just what we was talking about. They make use of these monopolies not only to command the obedience of subordinate African Americans, but to justify the legitimacy of their preponderant power over them. Moreover, they utilize their monopoly and competent authority to both obscure and legitimate their social power, exploitative, oppressive nature, and intent upon Black Americans. The legitimacy of competent and other forms of white authority to white African Americans voluntarily submit or freely give their consent are but special cases of the overall legitimacy of white power that have been conditioned, seduced, and otherwise compelled to accept and believe as morally justified. All right, so out of this whole section that I read, it's just a few more points that I want to make. The African that was enslaved and came out of chattel slavery had an opportunity, right, to create there was different paths. Africans were thinking about different things that they can do to benefit themselves. Some Africans wanted to stay and be integrated within the American system. There were some Africans who had decided that they wanted to leave the American system, American institution, right, and build a state of their own, whether it was going back to Africa, going back to West, just finding some land of their own where they could build a nation and be independent. And there were many Africans who, I think most Africans kind of fell in the middle of that and just wanted to survive. They wanted to do what was best for them and their family. So whether that was building a nation of their own or if they thought staying a part of this system was the right thing to do. And so they were looking towards leadership to see what leadership was doing. And there was particularly many of the bourgeois class, and whether, I mean, there was this idea that they could be a part of this system because the white man was selling dreams. The white Republican was selling dreams to the black man, black man and black woman, us not knowing that they were only using us for their own benefit against the other. You had two groups of white people who were struggling and competing against each other and was using the black nation as a political football. But I think like what's important for us to understand is that black people have always been integrated within this system. So this whole discussion, at least this is my position, we have been integrated within this system as subjects, though, whether it's slavery and so forth. Like even during after chattel slavery, even during Reconstruction, even during Jim Crow, all the way up to the Civil Rights Movement, there's black people working for white people. It was black people who were spending their money for white people. How was we not integrated in the system, right? We were paying taxes just like everyone else. And so the issue was assimilation. It was a lot of black people who wanted to be assimilated, but that's a whole nother discussion. But we were integrated in the system. We just didn't have the same rights. And so with that being said, though, the struggle to be a part of this system, this is the thing that we have to question. Why were so many people struggling to be a part of the system of oppression and exploitation? Why would you? And this goes back to what Dr. Amos N. Wilson says in regards to this idea of supremacy or superiority. You will only want to integrate or assimilate, I should say, into another people's culture if you think that that other culture is superior to yours. The only difference, though, there's two different. The African that has a nation on the continent and the Africans in the Caribbean, it's a different dynamic, but the same thing applies. But I think the struggle is different. But in the United States in particular, where we've always been subjects under the British colony, under the United States, so we never had a nation of our own here in America. I think like there was this idea of, there's always been like this idea that the United States of America was pushing democracy. There was something about this, at least this is my position, because why would we want to integrate into a system that oppressed and exploited us? It's something that we saw about the system that we thought was superior. We thought their way of democracy was superior. We thought that their ideas were superior to ours. But at the end of the day, I would say that we never had the opportunity to really develop a nation of our own or ideas of our own until later on. But now we're at the point that we do have ideas of our own, right? I think that the literature is out there for us to like really study. Yeah, prestige bias, absolutely. Prestige bias, that's what it is. And so, but I think like now we have tons of literature that we have to expose to the African that has been subjected, not just here in the United States, but around the world, to information that counters the idea of white supremacy and white superiority. They have been pushing these ideas on our people for years. They control the education institutions. We send our children to the education institutions. Why do we send our children to the education institutions of the colonized? Because it's something that we see superior in those institutions, or it's something what we don't think that we can develop and create institutions of our own to educate our children, right? So we continue in this cycle of being oppressed and exploited. So with that being said, though, I think I went over the expected time that I was going to do this live, man. But I want to appreciate everybody that came on. I kind of want to go to this last video of Malcolm X just to give you an idea. Actually, let me show you a couple. Let me show you. This is, again, this idea. I'm going to show you how the white supremacists, the racists, because I want to go back to what Dr. Amos N. Wilson, when he talked about this first paragraph on page 17. Competent authority or expertise may crucially be used as a mask for social privilege and power exercised by one group over another. It hides social privilege and power because it appears to merely exist to advance the public interest. When you have colonizers and racists in positions of power, it's coming back to me now. I almost missed this thought. I had this thought. You have colonizers and racists in positions of power in this system today, and we still are fighting to be a part of this system. And why is that? Why there's racists and colonizers, people who are oppressing and exploiting the African community, Africans in the United States and Africans around the world. And we still want to be a part of this system. So there has to be something about our psychology where we don't revolt against this system. And they tell us every day. So let me just pull this up. I just want to prove my point. I want to prove my point really quick. And I know he lost the latest election, but let me share my screen. This is Steve King. Some of you may know who he is. Some of you may not. Listen to what Steve King says about European people. Play that.
shouted down either kindly or roughly, but that's what's going to happen. This whole white people business, though, does get a little tired, Charlie. I mean, I'd ask you to go back through history and figure out where are these contributions that have been made by these other categories of people that you're talking about. Where did any other subgroup of people contribute more to civilization? And white people? Than Western civilization itself, that's rooted in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and the United States of America, and every place where the footprint of Christianity settled the world. That's all of Western civilization. I don't want to sit here and we're not going to argue the history of Western civilization. Let me know for the record that if you're looking at the ledger of Western civilization, for every flourishing democracy, you have you got Hitler and Stalin as well. So there's a lot on both sides. On Christianity.
Hi, Julian Gordon with
I hope y'all were able to hear that clearly. That's a former politician. That's a businessman. You know, this is someone who's representing the bourgeois class in the United States of America. I mean, he's a Republican, whether that matters or not, because you have Democrats who think like that as well. But this is someone who says that all civilization is rooted in Christianity and Western Europe. When they said white people, he said Western Europe. White people at the end of the day. Now, this is one of the leaders of this country. And again, he's one of many people who think like that. Many people who are in positions of power who control the lives of African people in this country and around the world. Why are we trying to integrate into a system like that with people who control a system, who control this system? Why do we want to integrate into that? So that's just something that we need to question. But again, this is going back to what Dr. Amos N. Wilson says, where that is cloaked, that is hidden. You know, we think that most people don't think like that. We think most people like him, he's being very open about these ideas, but we think most people don't think like that. Right? And that's the problem. So I'm going to leave this with this. I want to play this Malcolm X clip. It's a short clip, but Malcolm X speaks to exactly what Dr. Amos N. Wilson is talking about. Now he's going to talk about integration in here, and hope I'm playing this with the hopes that just like, you know, many of us are probably on the same page, but maybe people in the future who view this may be new to the teachings of Dr. Amos N. Wilson, and they come across this video, they make the connections and understand what Dr. Amos N. Wilson is talking about, as well as what Malcolm is talking about. So I want to share screen.
That you find students all over the world today are standing up for their rights and fighting for their rights. But here in America, the so-called Negro students have allowed themselves to be maneuvered under a tag of sit-in. Actually, I guess it describes it. The name describes its nature. It's a passive thing. And if their goal is integration, it's not a worthwhile one. But if their goal is freedom, justice, and equality, then that's a worthwhile goal. If integration is going to give the black people in America complete freedom, complete justice, and complete equality, then it's a worthwhile goal. The holding this integration bottle and dangling it in front of the Negroes in America today has actually disabled them, or it has nullified their ability to stand up and fight like a man for something that is theirs by right, rather than to just sit around and beg and wait for the white man to make up his mind that they're worthy to have this type thing. I think that this is, in my opinion, why we disagree with the sit-in movement. If they are willing to wait for another 100 years for the white man to change his mind to accept them as a human being, then they're wrong. But if they're willing to lay down their life tonight or in the morning in order that we can have what is ours by right tonight or in the morning, then it's a good movement. But as long as they're willing to wait for the white man to make up his mind that they are qualified to be respected as human beings, then I'm afraid that all of their waiting and their planning is for naught. Until the black man here in America is connected or reestablished or given some knowledge of his existence prior to coming here to America, his own appraisal of himself will be so low that he'll actually think that the white man is doing him a favor to let him be here in America, no matter what his status is. And he also, and this is one of the reasons today why he fights so hard, some of them, to sit down next to the white man. They actually think that the white man is the personification of perfection. And whenever they're allowed to go live in his neighborhood or sit in his restaurant or mingle or socialize with him, that they have attained, that they have made progress. But when they go back and study the history of their own people and the accomplishments of their own people, the civilizations and cultures, black civilizations and black cultures that existed in Africa at a time when the
hold on. I'm going to let that keep going, right? But I had to stop it because tell me Malcolm ain't touching on what Dr. Amos, what I just read, what Dr. Amos Wilson was saying, man. Malcolm was on it. Dr. Amos Wilson is touching on everything that Malcolm said probably 20, 30 years before him, right, in this speech. So if we all listen to Malcolm then, we'd probably be in better shape now. But what he said? He said we have to go back before America, right? Because again, the European, because they control the institutions. We talk about education, right? Just use education as an example where they're teaching our babies, right? They taught us, they taught our babies. And we're not even talking about today, let's just talk about for generations. We've been learning about what the European has accomplished, right? And that's why we had to come with Black History Month. We had to come with African-centered education and approaches, right? So we can center ourselves, because we have always been the objects of their history and their story, right? We've been marginalized. We've been put on the periphery. Everything started with the Roman. It started with the Greek in regards to philosophy, mathematics, right, and civilization. And so now, Malcolm is saying that we have to do, because if not, now we're looking at them as superior in everything, in every way, right? They created philosophy, science. Then we must be backwards. It's lucky that we here with these people. You got people, how many people we know or we heard say that slavery was a good thing, right? That's mental thinking right there. Slavery was a good thing. Colonization was a good thing, right? We would still be in Africa. Look at how Africa is now. This is the type of thinking. So this is what Dr. Amos Wilson was getting at, Malcolm's getting at right here, right? Because now we want to be next to the white man and so forth. So let me let it go. But that connection right there was very powerful.
The whites in Europe were living a cave-like existence, then immediately their appraisal of themselves begins to go higher, and they don't think that to beg somebody to mingle with them in this country is any kind of progress whatsoever. The black man in America is the only one who is encouraged to be nonviolent, or the black man in Africa, or the black man in Asia. Never do you find white people encouraging other whites to be nonviolent. Whites idolize fighters. They idolize the Hungarian freedom fighters.
I'm gonna leave it
who
there.
Came to this country.
Kind of going into a different topic. We're gonna say that for another day, man. But so the important thing to to take away from from this, if you're not already on it, for people, whoever's viewing this and it's really new to the information, this type of thinking, man, we have to knock the European off of their pedestal. They put themselves in a position where they can determine who an expert is. They put themselves in a position where they control institutions that we're dependent on, right? Food, clothing, and shelter. Dr. Bobby Wright talks about how they control all the life-sustaining institutions. And this is the reason why Africans continue to look at the European as some sort of God, almost godlike. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think the African on the continent is in a better position because they have all of the resources under their feet, right? They're letting people from outside of the continent control the resources that are right under their feet. What keeps them from not a literal wall, but what keeps them from building a wall around Africa? And I don't mean like in a literal sense, but just like saying, hey, nobody can come in here, and if you do come in here, it's on our terms. What keeps them from doing that? The African in places where we represent a numerical minority, such as the United States, numerically we may represent a minority because we're disconnected with the Africans around the world. But the dynamic is different. But what keeps us from saying, hey, we just going to do business with each other, and if we do business with other people, it's going to be on these terms. It's not going to benefit. It's not for the benefit of the European nation or system. It's going to be for the benefit of the African nation and system, because we should be creating a nation and a system of our own. So with that being said, man, appreciate everybody for being a part of this discussion. Make sure you share this to your platforms. Make sure you like it if you haven't. Subscribe to the channel. We charge Colonialism if you haven't already. And I'll be back here next Sunday at 9, but I may be doing another Black Power reading sometime during the week. But I want Sundays to be a consistent day, but I want to get through this book as quickly as not as quickly as possible, but there's a lot to read. We're talking about a 900-page book. So, there may be a day or two throughout the week that I'm going to do another session. So peace to the family. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time, Uhuru.